Mr. Ken Beaugrand.
Good morning, Gino.
Good morning.
It is cold out there.
Man. What are you going to do, though, right, Ken?
Absolutely. It's part of what we love about Nantucket.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You really are, aren't you?
I am. I'm having a great time. I just decided that at this stage of my life, there was something that I hadn't done in all of the different experiences I've had, and that was work for government. And so when Libby approached me to sort of talk to me about the newly created position of the real estate specialist, I took a look at it, and it looked like it was something really, really interesting, and I thought I could hopefully make a difference for the town. So,
when did you get the job?
April 22.
So you're brand new. Brand new.
Right.
All right. Well, we're going to talk all about that.
Right.
Your background was real estate. I mean, didn't you have Nantucket real estate?
Yes, I did. When we first moved here 26 years ago, I ended up buying Nantucket real estate from Kurt and Joan Barnes, and I have made that into really very, very dynamic operation. A couple of years ago, I guess it's almost 8 or 9 years ago, I talked to Penny and Heidi, and what we did was we merged Nantucket Real Estate with their operation, and it became Atlantic East Nantucket Real Estate.
Oh, I see. So that's what happened to it.
And so we were really very fortunate because through work with Joan Barnes, we reserved the URL Nantucket Real Estate early on, and so it was one of the most incredible things for the internet to have that as your URL.
Oh, I know it.
And we obviously still kept that with Atlantic East because we still are through that. It always comes up on the first page when anybody does a search for Nantucket Real Estate.
So are you still involved?
I am on a part-time basis. I'm working full-time for the town now. But
there's no conflict of interest there?
No, there isn't, because of the fact that anything that involves anything with the town, obviously I have to recuse myself and can't be involved.
Does that happen often?
No. Now, the reason I'm still involved is I have a number of clients that I've had over the years that I want to continue to service, and I'm not actively out looking for new business. So,
what made you come to Nantucket in the first place?
Well, my wife and I I grew up in Connecticut, and she grew up on the Jersey Shore, and so the ocean was really always very important to us. And through business, we ended up in living in many different parts of the world, and about 35 years ago, we were living up in Toronto, and so we wanted to come back to the ocean, and some good friends of ours had a cottage out in Wellwinnet that they rented for a month in the summertime. And back then, if you gave up the cottage because there wasn't very much, you never got it back. So they talked to us and they said, well, would you guys be interested in taking our month's rental for this particular year, because they were going off to Europe. And we said, sure. And then, because we've been coming down to the Cape and staying in Chatham and what have you. And as what happens with this, just about everybody else, you come here and you fall in love with the place. So it became history. So it became the place that we always came back to.
Were you doing real estate at that time?
Well, at that point in time, I was the president and CEO of a life insurance company in Canada, and I was involved.
Are you Canadian?
No. Business took me up to Canada.
Oh, I see.
And so I was involved on the investment side of the operations as well as the legal side of the operations. And so real estate was always a fascination for us. And so it just became a natural thing to do as you moved around in terms of the different things you did in life.
So when you decided that you would live here, or, I mean, you took over the monthly rental, how soon after that did you actually decide to move here?
Well, I guess it was about probably 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay. You kept coming, though.
We kept coming, yeah. And the thing is that we always ended up going out to Wellwinnet, and we were in the Crow's Nest cottages. And what happened was that very first summer, we met 3 other families that had kids around the ages of our kids, and we became really good friends because the kids played with each other in the playground out in the Crow's Nest area. And we've remained friends with those people over the last 35 years, still in touch with them. And so what we would do is we would organize our vacations. They originally started in July, then they moved to August, and everybody coordinated it so that everybody came back at the same time.
That's nice.
And so it became part of the summer tradition. So Nantucket became part of our lives a lot before we even moved here full
Did
time.
you decide to go into real estate, or did you go as a agent first, or how did you all this?
Well, what happened was I was one of the finalists for the worldwide CEO job of a company called Manulife Financial, and the board at the end decided to choose somebody from outside the company and outside the industry, and so in a series of events that I won't go into, I was the odd man out. So I went through the sort of 6-month process of looking at different opportunities that were available, and they were really, really interesting, but they weren't in places that we wanted to live. And so finally, I said to my wife, Gussie, who had gone back and had a really very important job when we were living in Toronto, because she was working with IBM and she was coordinating the back office operations of the stock brokerage firms in Toronto that were owned by the Canadian banks. I said, if I could find something to do in Nantucket, what would you think about if we moved there full time? And she just looked at me and said, I thought you'd never ask. So it was really perfect. So what we had to do was we decided that we were going to move here, and I decided that real estate was probably an area that would be fun to be, but I also had background both on the legal and the investment side through the different roles that I played in the various corporate companies I've been in. So we came down here and I negotiated with Joan and Kurt Barnes to buy the company, and went through had all the experience.
You wanted to buy the company. You didn't want to start as just an agent.
No.
Yeah.
And so, but I had to go through.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to go through the licensing and all of that stuff through that period of time.
Sure.
But the object of the exercise was to buy the company, and I worked with Joan and Jane, Joan and Curtis in those early years, and still work together with Curtis in terms of some of the joint clients that we had developed over the years.
So that's how it all came about, huh? Interesting. And so you learned a lot about real estate doing that, boy.
Well,
I mean, you were there during the big booms. There were a couple of slides.
The real interesting is the fact of the sort of the roller coaster ride that property goes on over the period of time, and so you learn from all of those experiences. And one of the things that's been really interesting is that real estate is probably historically been one of the safest investments long term, because particularly here on Nantucket, because the market generally goes down slower and less than it does anywhere else, and generally comes back quicker and more than anywhere else. And so as long as you're a long-term player, this is a good place to be. So
if someone were to be looking at Nantucket,
well, the thing is I think the most important thing is that when you're looking at it, my concern is that Nantucket has historically been looked at as a place to sort of satisfy lifestyle goals, right? And that's been what's made this the very special place that it is, because in fact, those people participate in the community, they participate in the charitable functions of the community, they participate in keeping and making it the very special place that it is, where we really reach out and help people in the community, but also help all sorts of causes. There have been varying times in the last 25 years that I've been involved in that Nantucket has been a place that's been looked at for investment as opposed to for a lifestyle. I think we're going through a bit of that cycle right now, but it always corrects itself, because in fact what happens is that people begin to realize what makes this place special is the fact that we do care about what goes on in the community, we do care about the year-round people, we do care about all of the things that make this place the really delightful and wonderful place to live.
Okay, now that's true on one side, but then on the other side, I mean, it is a fact that you have a lot of guys that are buying places and building spec.
You went through that cycle again. If you go back to the turn of the century,
Okay.
We're not talking about turn of the century.
Well,
19 years ago, you had
That's true, yeah.
but you had a period of time for a 5 or 6 year period where you went through the same thing, where it became something that became very attractive, and you had a lot of people coming in, buying up properties, developing, and.
But how does that enhance it, Ken?
Well,
I mean, by speccing things, just simply buying places and then putting a bunch of places on a piece of property so that you can make $1 million, billion, whatever it is that you're making. You're doing it for an investment.
That's correct, and that's. But what happens is that depending on where you buy in that part of the cycle, you may end up making some money, or you may end up being, you go 8 years out from 2000, and all of a sudden you've got the correction in the marketplace. Okay,
right.
And so what happens is that those properties end up turning over. I'm not suggesting that is good for the community, but the fact of the matter is it's part of what happens. We can't control that. We've tried to do that through different things over the years, and it has never really worked very well. So what ends up happening is that the natural law of selection ends up sort of coming into play, and the people that are really bought it for the right place, for the right reasons, end up with it at the end of the day. And the people that were looking for just short-term gain and whatnot, sometimes they're successful, other times it doesn't end up being that way.
So how would you describe where we're at right now?
Right now, I think the market is in an interesting phase. I think it's going through I wouldn't say the end of the cycle. I think that there's still the market still probably will be strong for another year and a half or so, based on what's happening with respect to the stock market, because the real estate market is really related, very much tied into the stock market.
Of course.
But again, what I'm not seeing is the rampant sort of building and the rampant sort of trying flipping that we went through over the last 2, 3, maybe 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
So that's not to say that construction isn't going on, but it is. But it isn't in the frenetic style and pace that it was going on before.
So how would you describe where we're at right now? Would you say that the bigger, more expensive, 3 million plus, 5 million plus homes are selling better than the lower end?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that what I'm saying is that marketing, that properly priced in the under 3 million range have a much stronger level of interest and activity, because that, as funny as this may sound, that's sort of the price range that people that are looking at Nantucket, that are looking at a second home with respect to a lifestyle, feel that that's an investment level that they can commit to.
Yeah.
And so, as opposed to the much higher level, which has more of an investment component and a financial return to it.
Right. Okay. And so here you are now with this town job. Explain it to us.
Well, the town job is really interesting because it goes